What's up guys, welcome to the Refinement. In today's video we're going to go over a seller in our group who had 40 of her listings ended because of a simple mistake that all sellers do. So please smash the like button, consider subscribing. We'll talk about what happened. We'll see you inside. Before we get into the video, we have to talk about the Vero Program, which is the Verified Rights Owner Program. And essentially, this allows the brand or a representative of the brand to end a listing that they feel like is infringing on their property. So in layman terms, it means that a brand doesn't want you selling their stuff. So we're going to go over exactly why the Vero Program ended this lady's listings in this video. So when this post popped up, it was actually the most Veros I've ever seen in one email. That wasn't a complete account suspension. So sometimes Vero or eBay will give you a suspension and all your listings will be taken down. In this scenario, the seller didn't get any reprimand, so they didn't get any penalty, they weren't suspended, and I think it's because it was an honest mistake that the listings were ended. But essentially, there were 12 different brands and 4 different categories that were ended, which is very unusual because when that happens, usually it's because one brand you were listing wasn't okay with it, but in this scenario, 12 different brands and 4 different categories were ended, so it required more investigation. So before I explain the eBay communication that happened to the seller, I just want to point out that all 40 of these items were ended by Angry Birds, and none of the items had anything to do with Angry Birds. So when you scroll to the bottom of the email, it actually mentioned that Angry Birds, the official rights holder, ended all these listings because one of the checkboxes in the character part of eBay and the item specifics was checked. So she checked Angry Birds, even though she was listing a dress, some pajamas, some women's pants, and some sleepwear. So 4 different categories. The character was accidentally selected for Angry Birds, and this happened because she essentially was selling similar off of her own listings, and the Angry Birds was accidentally checked. So I actually looked on eBay, and a lot of different categories accidentally click Angry Birds, and that's just because alphabetically Angry Birds is really early, and Angry Birds is very, very protective of their brand, so you can't sell anything related to that. So at the thrift store, you might see Angry Birds merch, you might see games, you might see towels with the Angry Bird logo on it. Avoid all of that because they're very aggressive, even to the point where a character, so she didn't use it in the title, she didn't use it in the item specifics, but just one of those check boxes. And you'll see different checkboxes for like Superman, Batman, The Simpsons, Marvel, DC, Angry Birds, all popular games, all popular pop culture will be in there, but don't select it, and make sure that when you're reviewing your listings before you launch, that there aren't brands that are listed that are not yours. So there's a couple of infractions that could have happened here. It could be keyword spamming. So essentially, like maybe you list a Marvel item and you also click DC to get all the people who like that category. That would be a version of keyword spamming. In this scenario, it was just accidentally checked, so it was categorized all into Angry Birds, that world of Angry Birds. So essentially, an authorized representative for Angry Birds, so let's say a legal intern or somebody working in the legal department, can work on behalf of Angry Birds and just ask eBay to remove all the listings. Now, it's really important to understand why. eBay wants to have a healthy relationship with all these brands, and they don't want to piss the brands off and have the brands say, you can't sell my items on this for any reason, because you will see there are certain brands that you can't sell that somebody can sell because they do have permission from the brand. That's why sometimes people ask, how come this seller is allowed to sell this and I can't? Or this listing hasn't been ended. So either you haven't been caught yet by their authorized representative or the algorithm, or maybe they actually do have the rights. If you guys check out, some eBay listings actually do have the authorized distributor logo on them, and that means they have permission from the brand to sell it. A lot of people in the comment section had asked, were these items new or were these items used? So you'll see a lot of people, if they get a big closeout of, let's say, 100 pieces of Ralph Lauren, they might put all these brand new pieces in the pre-owned category so they don't get lumped into brand new, because it's much more suspicious for the brand if you have a lot of quantity of a new item, especially if it's a new item that's currently in season. Even on Amazon, like you might be ungated in, let's say, Under Armour, but you can't sell Under Armour current season. Because essentially what you're doing is you're competing against Dick's Sporting Goods or all the companies that carry the brand normally. If you have the item and you're undercutting them, it's hurting the brand. So some brands may allow you to sell previous seasons and not the current season. So to avoid that, some people circumvent that and put all their items in the used. But I'll tell you for sure, these brands, especially the more aggressive they are, they monitor new and used, so it's not going to save you putting items in used The only thing that's going to save you is if you have written permission from the brand. At the end of the email from eBay, you can actually respond to the verified right owner. So if you respond to them and they don't respond back, then it gives you a little bit more of a case to get that ding removed from your account. I think in this scenario, with 40 Veros going out, so 40 violations in a row hitting her account and no actions being taken against her account, means that most likely somebody reviewed this and thought it was an honest mistake. So the listings were removed. She'll just have to put the listings back up again this time. She probably will have to redo her pictures, redo the titles, redo everything. But again, that's a small price to pay since her account was not damaged. And now she needs to make sure to go through all the rest of her listings and make sure none of the other listings accidentally have Angry Birds checked. So it's really important to understand these kinds of scenarios. You want to get the infraction removed from your account if you can, kind of like expunged from your record, by just asking eBay saying, look, I didn't mean to list this item as an Angry Birds thing. It was an accident. So can you please remove this? I also reached out to Angry Birds. They responded saying, honest mistake, no problem. So if you have that correspondence of either they didn't respond back to you or they sent you back, no problem, just don't list our items anymore. It'll help you get that removed. So now there's even more complication added to this. So a lot of people in the comments had also asked, are you selling them internationally? So some brands can be sold here in the United States and they cannot be sold overseas. There are other brands also that have the opposite. An example would be like Tom's shoes. I know that a lot of Tom's shoes, when they're clearanced, they like to sell them only in the UK. So when they clearance these, they don't want it to affect the US market, so it's shipped over to a different country. It works the other way too. Countries in Europe may have an agreement with the brand to sell items at a certain price. So if you're selling into that market, you could have your items ended. That happens a lot with Nike. So people who are selling Nike and use the international policies, just be careful that you are in compliance with every single country. And again, this can be complicated, but it's part of the questions you need to ask when you get your items ended by Vero. So now I want to talk about what not to do. So in our group, even in the comment section, some people made the wrong observation and they said, you know what? She listed these items in the sleepwear category. She listed some clothing. She listed some dresses. I'm never going to list dresses, sleepwear, or intimates again. I'm going to stay away from those categories. That is the wrong takeaway from this. The right takeaway is that Angry Birds, the verified right owner, doesn't want you to use the Angry Birds name in the title or in the item specifics. That's the right takeaway. So a lot of people will hear something on YouTube and they make a drastic change in their business, totally missing the point of what this lesson is. So in this video, I'm talking about understanding in your categories, staying within your lane and away from brands that frequently Vero. Inside of our group, which you can find at patreon.com/theresarspodcast, we have an updated BOLO list. And again, just because it's safe now doesn't mean it's safe in the future. And just because it was verified before doesn't mean they pursue it now. There's actually people who list items for defunct companies because they know those defunct companies are no longer around and they won't come after you. So it's pretty interesting listening to all the different ways that eBay tries to protect its sellers, one, and tries to protect its brands that it can sell, because it's not in eBay's best interest to eliminate Angry Birds from being sold on the platform at all, but it is in their best interest and everyone's best interest to make sure that eBay has a good relationship with Angry Birds. So there is some items that are under the Angry Birds franchise that are allowed to be sold on eBay. So make sure that you really think about it. There are exceptions to almost every single rule. In conclusion, it's really, really important to take your time when you're building your first listing to sell similar from. So we have to follow Tech and Sports' advice, which is perfect first, then fast. So you want to make sure the template that you're using for sell similar, so let's say that you're selling jeans. If your template has a mistake and it checks Angry Birds in there, and then you sell similar, then essentially you're multiplying the defect across all your listings. So it's really important to take your time. eBay just came out in their last communication from eBay Open that if you don't know the item specific, it's better to leave it blank and to put NA or not applicable or none, because if it's not in the drop down menu, you're actually kind of confusing the search algorithm by making up your own item specific. So it's really important to look through every single item specific that's relevant to your item. Take your time. Every single thing matters. So I get emails all the time. Is it important to do this? Is it important to do that? Every single thing is important, and don't make up item specifics, and make sure it's really important to avoid putting in incorrect item specifics, because you automatically lose the return and you get an item not as described against your account. And the number one part of selling on eBay is protecting your eBay account. So I appreciate you guys. Please join our Patreon if you want more posts like this and more information and dialogue about these types of issues at patreon.com/theresellers podcast. And we'll see you guys next time.